What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. So this is one of these things that, I was pretty well set on getting a Lamborghini. Until then, I got the money to get the Lamborghini, and now I'm just like, is that the smartest thing to do? You sure about this? Because you could go and buy another house. So this is one of these things, and don't worry, I'm not going to be one of these dudes on YouTube that just like drags the topic of buying a Lamborghini out for like a year, and then nothing ever happens. I'm not going to do that. But I am at the point where I really do need to make a decision which kind of path I'm going to go. And I also feel like making a video like this is going to help clarify my thoughts of really putting it all out there. And I don't want this to be a video, by the way, where I just like spew stuff to camera. I really want this to be a little bit more of a discussion. So feel free to comment and let me know your thoughts and what you might be inclined to do. Like I said, I read everything, I take everything into consideration. So if you have any thoughts throughout this entire video, make sure to comment it down below. And like I said, I read everything. And by the way, I totally realize that at 27 years old, this is quite a unique and fortunate situation to be in. Of all the things going on or that could be happening in my life, that one of my questions is, should I pick a Lamborghini or buy another house? I totally get that. But at the same time, I would love to see all of you to have the same opportunity at some point in the future where you have the opportunity to pick, should I buy a Lambo or another house? Maybe if you're not into cars, you're not into cars, that's totally fine. But at least have the choice between the two. So originally the goal at the start of the year was to sell the Exige behind me and then buy a Lamborghini. Now, of course, I was gonna wait until I had the money to do that, and then I was just gonna go and do it. But what ends up happening every single time I end up having enough money to buy a car like a Lamborghini, I end up just investing it instead. And of course, now here I am again with the money to buy a Lamborghini, and here I am again questioning if that is really the best move to make at this point in my life. It's a bit of a toss-up for me between doing what I think is best financially or just saying it and going and buying the Lamborghini or maybe the Mercedes SLS AMG or maybe like something in that range. So when it comes to any sort of money or investment related decision, I analyze everything extremely closely. I really come up with the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, what's the amount of risk involved, how much time is it going to take me, how much money is it going to take me, what can I realistically expect, what's going to happen in the best case scenario, everything. I analyze it to a T and then I make a decision based off that. And I remember having this exact same thought when I was 21 years old. This is maybe 2011, early 2012. I had about $200,000 saved up. And this was about 4 years worth of savings working as a real estate agent. At the time, I wanted to go on eBay and buy a Lamborghini, or I wanted to buy like a Ford GT. I really, like in the back of my mind, that was this fantasy that I could just be like, fuck it, buy the car, do it. But instead of doing that, I ended up buying real estate. And that was one of the best decisions I have ever made, to not buy the car. Real estate by far was a much more rewarding and better investment than, buying a Ford GT. And then the same thing happened again when I was 25 years old. Same thing. I had this money saved up and I was thinking, okay, I could just say fuck it right now and buy a used Mercedes SLR McLaren. But I didn't do that, and instead I bought real estate. I bought another house, and that was one of the best decisions I have ever made because that house ended up making over $400,000 in equity since I had bought it. And then this happened again not even 12 months ago. Again, I had all the money saved up and I was thinking I could just blow it on the car, but I ended up getting a duplex instead, and that's where I'm now living, which I pretty much now live for free by living in the duplex. And it made money on top of that, so that by far was the best decision, again, that I could have done, way better than buying a car. And of course, here I am now with the opportunity again to get the car, or I can make, again, the smart financial decision to probably invest it in real estate. Now, a lot of this goes back to when I was 16. The car that was like my unobtainable dream car was the Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster. And that was the car for me that you would see it and I would just flip out as a kid. Like I was the kid who you would hear it coming and you'd just be like, what's that? And would like run out to the street just to like get a glimpse. That's the holy grail. And since I was about 16, Lamborghini has always just been one of these cars that's just excited me. There's just something about Lamborghini that just is like, it brings out the 16-year-old. So I was pretty well set on this, and then I test drove a 2014 Lamborghini Gallardo coupe the other day and was just incredibly disappointed. I really ended up hating the car. I mean, the Lotus Exige, in my opinion, was so much better of a car than the 2014 Gallardo Coupe. So that leads me to think I wouldn't be happy with a Gallardo, which means that I might have to try out a Gallardo Spider or a Performante or Superleggera. Now, I also test drove a Mercedes SLS AMG, which honestly, to me, was one of the perfect cars. Loved it. I loved the sound, the acceleration, the rarity, the uniqueness. I loved everything about this car, but there's something about it that I just don't get the Lamborghini excitement as like when I was 16. Like, this is really just like to feed the inner 16-year-old, just being that kid who's like, yeah, I got the Lamborghini. But it's still an amazing car. But let me know your thoughts, comment down below. I did a thing on Instagram. Pretty much it's almost 50-50 between the SLS and the Gallardo in terms of which you guys would prefer. So when it comes to actually owning one of these cars and buying them, here's my reasoning behind it. A lot of these cars, when bought correctly, are not going to lose much, if any, value. Especially in my opinion, the Superleggera and Performante Gallardos. They're a pretty specialty and niche car where someone's willing to pay a premium for that car. Even the 2008 Gallardo Superleggeras have rarely come down in value. They're still hovering between about $130,000 to $160,000. So a 2011 to 2014 Superleggera or Performante, in my opinion, you buy these cars about $150 to $160 grand, they're really not going to drop that much in value. Now, of course, the Huracan, in my opinion, is an all-around superior car in every single way. I just can't justify spending $200,000 on a Huracan that's going to go down in value probably another $30,000 over the next year. That to me is like, okay, that's crossing the line. I'm not going to lose 30 grand in depreciation over a year. Versus the Gallardo Performantes, or even you buy like a $120,000 Gallardo Spider, like a newer year, if you can find something with reasonable miles, it's really not going to go down in value very much. And at that point, the car pretty much just becomes a savings account for a few years, where you put your money, instead of sitting in a savings account, it's in the car instead. You drive it for a few years and then you sell it for almost the same price you bought it for. And also, let's be real here. From a branding standpoint, nothing quite has a draw or excitement as a Lamborghini does. Now, it's the same sort of situation with the Mercedes SLS AMG. I found a really nice car for about $140,000. I can't imagine any reason it would drop any lower. So again, it would pretty much just be like a savings account, plus maybe some appreciation, because I really feel that that car is a good investment. It just doesn't quite have the same draw as a Lamborghini does. That whole situation is fairly straightforward. If I ended up doing something like that, I'd probably put down between $60,000 and $80,000 and then just finance the rest of it. But like I said, I overanalyze everything, and these are my thoughts if I were to invest the full purchase price of the car as a down payment in real estate instead. So for the way I see it, interest rates are still pretty low. It's basically teetering on the point where I feel like I should be taking advantage of these low prices before they get much higher. Now, I personally believe interest rates will probably end up around 5% at the end of the year, at which point it's going to be a lot harder to justify buying some of these properties when my intention is really to hold it for 30 years. So the difference over 30 years between 4.5% and 5% can actually add up to something pretty significant from locking in a year from now than doing it today. Now, one of the problems here, and this is my own fault, is that I like investing in Los Angeles. It's the market I know the best. It's the market I feel like has a ton of potential in terms of appreciation, but it's also a market where it's a needle in a haystack, especially today, to find something that even remotely makes sense as a rental property that I believe has enough equity in it after I renovate it, and also is going to be in an area that's going to be going up in value. Realistically, at this point, the best case scenario is I find a great property that breaks even cash flow wise, that hopefully I can end up making a little bit of equity at the very beginning when I buy it by renovating it, and then hold it. And realistically, it's probably going to take me 4 to 5 years to begin really seeing some cash flow from it, as rents just increase around that area that I'm buying in. But on the flip side of that, I should be making about $600 a month in equity from paying down the loan, and I should be able to see about $100,000 in extra appreciation probably over the next 3 years or so. And with that, I'd be getting a great property in a really up-and-coming area of Los Angeles with a lot of development going around. And the real potential in this is probably about 5 to 10 years from now as the entire area just transforms and improves. And by the way, for anyone watching who's in Los Angeles, the areas I really believe in East Hollywood, West Adams, Jefferson Park, and Baldwin Hills. So there you go and make some money. But given that, hypothetically speaking, there's nothing really stopping me from waiting a year and a half and trying to find a similar deal. The only variable at that point will really be what interest rates are. See, right now in Los Angeles, home prices are really being driven by an improving economy, low interest rates, and low supply of homes. And from a buyer's perspective, it's actually just the low interest rate that really puts the pressure on a buyer buying now, today, as soon as possible, before interest rates inevitably go up. That's what's causing a lot of people right now to just try to buy whatever they can to lock it in. In Los Angeles, we have a record low of supply, and we had never had so much demand before than right now, and there is simply not enough homes to go around for all the buyers who want to buy them. So even with rising interest rates, that isn't deterring any buyers. If anything right now, they want to just buy even more. But the one thing I don't really have a full grasp on is what's going to happen once rates exceed 5%, and the cost of borrowing money just becomes a little bit too expensive. And is that going to mean that demand might wane a bit and slow down? But conversely, on the flip side of things, interest rates really only go up during an improving economy where wages also are going up at the same time. And also, generally speaking, historically, the cost of borrowing money with higher interest rates has no direct correlation with the price of real estate. It's just a really small component of a much larger picture. And since real estate is such a localized game, the local economics, supply, demand, and future growth potential is much more important than interest rates alone. And this is where I really start to go down the rabbit hole in terms of overanalyzing everything. At this point, we've seen such an amazing run-up in the price of real estate. Now, we came from a drastic overcorrection. We came out of such a recession and came back stronger than ever. But at the same time, I'm starting to see way more properties starting to come on the market. I'm starting to see a lot more flippers out there. I'm starting to see a lot more people feel comfortable with moving because all of a sudden they've had all this equity built up in the property and they're starting to take profits. And also, there's zero downward pressure on real estate prices besides maybe rising interest rates, which at the same time, low supply is still keeping prices continually going up. There's a chance that rising interest rates will mean that we're not going to see these huge 10% annual increases like we see in the previous years. If anything, I think we're going to see some more predictable, sustainable, slower growth that's still going to be pretty good over the next 10 years or so. It's not going to be these drastic, just like year-over-year gains, probably depending on the area, but I think it's going to be a lot more sustainable. And that makes me think, maybe now is the perfect time to go and buy a Lamborghini or like equivalent car like that, basically put all my money in the car, continue saving, and then after 2 years or so, sell the car and reinvest back in the market. But the one thing is that the sub $700,000 market here in Los Angeles is absolutely unstoppable. Even with rising interest rates, there is zero downward pressure on homes under about $700,000. Even as interest rates go up and things become way more expensive, all of a sudden, the $1 million buyers, the $800,000 buyers, they look to the $700,000 homes as being better deals, which then drives the prices up of those $700,000 homes because all of a sudden more people are competing for the lower end. And the lower end has more room just to go up because not that many people are looking at that market. A lot of the buyers right now are really looking between about 900 and about 1.3 for the average buyer here in probably Los Angeles. $700,000 market. Too many people are overlooking that, and people are just starting to realize how much opportunity there is right now. I believe that real estate prices here in LA will, at the worst case scenario, just keep pace with inflation over the next few years. Worst case scenario, that's just what I believe. And there's got to be a lawyer out there that's being like, Graham, you have to tell them that this isn't investment advice. So guys, this is not investment advice. This is purely my opinion. Invest at your own risk and whatever else YouTubers say so that they don't get sued. But yeah, invest at your own risk purely, for entertainment purposes only. There we go. Now, even if we look at a similar market like San Francisco, you can see the downturns don't really last that long, and they typically are about 10% before they begin to recover. But on a normal recovery time, a 10% decline over a few years is really no difference for someone who's just planning to buy and hold it long term anyway. it really doesn't make that big of a difference. But even assuming this, it would be like buying a Lamborghini in the year 2000 and then reinvesting in real estate in 2003, where pretty much it's a break even and I'd had the opportunity to own a Lamborghini for a bit. Now LA is a bit similar to this, but I believe it's its own specialty market where individual neighborhoods and areas are its own little micro economy that are each going to have their separate pros and cons and flaws and advantages. So those are my thoughts when it comes to analyzing the real estate side of things. Now, everything I've done in the past, I've always prioritized investing first, car second, and I had never once regretted that decision. But this is the first time in my life where I felt like there's very little financial disincentive just to say, fuck it, buy the Lamborghini, have it for a few years, and then reinvest afterwards. Or maybe I could do the Mercedes SLS AMG, which is an amazing car, I absolutely love it. It just doesn't quite excite the 16-year-old in me. And a lot of this is just to excite the 16-year-old kid in me that's always wanted a Lambo. Or I can just continue to do what I was doing and just take the financially responsible route throughout my 20s and just invest everything I have. I can buy another property, even though it's probably gonna break even cash flow wise, and then maybe buy, 10 Lamborghinis in the future. And of course, there's nothing stopping me just from saving up and buying a Lamborghini in the future, and in the meantime, I got this amazing Exige behind me that I absolutely love. But I'm also one of these people that I just love practicing what I preach, and I tell everybody just to invest as much money as you can, and your 20s should really just be about investing and then reinvesting and continually reinvesting, and by doing so, you can be financially independent and really do whatever the fuck you want later and buy as many Lamborghinis as you want later. But now is the time to really hunker down and really make investing a priority. So it feels really weird to me to consider being in a position where I'm not investing all of my money and getting a car. But that also makes me think, at what point is enough enough? And at what point can you justify buying something extravagant just because you want it? And I'm not gonna lie too, we all know from a branding standpoint, nothing quite has the impact like a Lamborghini, which could actually end up making more money just from purely a branding standpoint. And I'm one of these people too, I'd rather take a pretty conservative approach and do really one or the other at this point. Who knows what the position is gonna be like at the end of the year, but at this point, it's really, do I go left or do I go right? So with that said, I think I went into way more detail than what I was originally anticipating, but let me know down below what you would do. I would sell the Exige, probably end up with a Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera, Performante, or maybe the Mercedes SLS AMG. Or I can keep the car and just invest in real estate, or I can keep the car and maybe just wrap it some absurd, stupid color, and that would be fun enough, and then maybe get the Lamborghini in the future. And by the way, again, I'm not gonna be one of these people that's just gonna drag this out for months. I'll, come up with a decision, and, that's gonna be my decision. And by the way, a bit of me is afraid, I hope this video did not come off in the wrong way. I figured I would just share my perspective and what thought processes go through in my head in terms of making a decision because, it's a big purchase to me. I really don't spend a lot of money when it comes to this sort of stuff. Everything I spend, I really just see as an investment. And the Lamborghini is one of the few things that I've wanted for a long time, but it's hard for me to get over that mental hurdle of just dropping that amount of money on a car when I could be buying real estate with it instead. So at least this is my thought process. I hope it doesn't come off as me being crazy first world problems or anything like that. These are just thought processes that go on in my head, and I figured I'd, just record it because that's what I do. So anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure to smash the subscribe button. Also feel free to add me on Snapchat and Instagram. I post it pretty much daily, so if you want to be a part of it there, feel free to add me there. Thank you again for watching, and until next time.